Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking Career Growth with PMI Certification Q&A, presented by the Head of Management Solutions at Educate 360, Brent Nair. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting in moderating our session today. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or that Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Brent.
Thanks, Mariella. Welcome, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I hope everyone's having a great week. One of the things that we wanted to talk about was I don't want to say abundance, but the numerous certs that PMI offers, and PMI Project Management Institute. So we thought what we'd do is kind of do an introduction, talk about the certifications, and then open up the floor, the virtual floor, so to speak, to have a few questions for you. However, there are about 10 certifications that we're going to discuss today. We thought we'd start with a poll and find out from you, our audience, which of the certifications would you like to hear most about today? So Mariella, if you don't mind kicking off that poll, we can get started and see which of the certifications are most important to everyone.
Excellent. Yeah, I will go ahead and give us about 30 seconds to get some in. I already see
Sure.
some coming in. Awesome to see the wide array.
Yeah, right now the early leader is, of course, the gold standard, the project management professional certification. So we have 10 now we're picking up. There's 11. Come on, a couple more, and hopefully we get everyone to participate.
Alrighty, I'll go ahead and cut it off here, but it looks like PMP and PMICP are leading for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, awesome. Here are the results. Excellent. Awesome. Thank you so
Okay.
much for engaging, everyone. Awesome to
Yeah.
see.
Well, let's go ahead then and start with the PMP certification. First off, though, let's take a minute and overall just take a quick kind of introduction. Why do people get certifications? For the most part, that last item there, the 30%, 33% higher median salary. We see that range across the board, whether it's the PMP, the CP, the ACP, the risk professional, whatever. Certifications in the long run pay off and actually, if you think about a 33% salary bump the lifetime of your career, you're going to make back what you pay or for any of the training as well as the time that you put into it. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the PMP, since that's our first one. A couple of general things about the PMP. It's 180 questions. Out of that 180 questions, there are 5 test questions. Those 5 test questions do not impact your score either positively or negatively. So think about you're scored on 175 questions. The exam lasts a little over 3.75 hours, 3.83 hours, or 230 minutes. The cost of the exam is $675 if you're not a member of PMI. And if you join PMI, even in that first year, the cost is reduced. I highly recommend that if you're thinking about taking and getting your PMP, which of course some of at least 11 of you or 9 of you are interested in, I recommend that you join PMI. Not only do you get a $150 reduction in the exam fee, but you also gain access to a lot of digital materials, as well as articles, etc., that'll help you. The cost to joining PMI is usually, if you add your local chapter, if there's one in your area, is usually around $150. So it equals out in the exam reduction fee. The exam itself, of course, is broken down into 3 content areas: people, process, and business. The biggest area is process, and followed by people or ways of working, and then lastly by the business. How do projects bring value to the business? In order to sit for the exam, PMI, of course, asks you to fill out an application. As part of filling out an application, you have to show that you either have a secondary degree, a high school or GED, or a bachelor's degree or higher. Um, either of those either of those situations also require 35 hours of project education. If you take the PMP prep class from Educate 360 Project Management Academy, our classes meet those 35 hours of project education. And I am a little biased, I will say, and say that I think we offer the best training program available. If you have a secondary education and not a bachelor's or master's, you are required to have 60 months of project experience within the last 8 years. That's what the 8 in parentheses means, 8 years. That 60 months can be spread, or 5 years of project experience can be spread over 8 years. In other words, you could have a gap. It doesn't have to be continuous project management experience. You don't have to have the title of project manager. You just have to have led, had participated in project activities. One of the nice things, if you take our PMP education class, prep class, is that we provide you with an application guidance booklet to show you how to fill out your application, as well as materials online. Now, moving to the other side, if you have your bachelor's, you only need to have 3 years of project management experience. So those are the basics for the PMP exam. Now, one of the things that I'd like to mention, regardless of whether it's the PMP, whether it's the CAPM, the CP, which is construction professional, or the Agile certification professional, any of the certification exams, all of the exams are standardized testing exams. And so that means they're going to be multiple choice. They're going to be matching potentially, maybe fill in the blank. There's going to be 4 answers for you to choose from. PMI wants you to pick the best of the 4, which means there may be questions that the answers to that question may sound very similar. So you have to read the question. What I tell students is, as you read the question, which more than likely is going to be scenario based, they're going to say, in this situation or in this scenario, and they'll lay out the scenario for you. What would you do first? Or what's the best response? So you want to look at that last sentence, which is usually a question, to help you determine what are they really asking. And then based upon the responses, more than likely you can immediately, or rather quickly, throw out at least 2 of the responses. So now you have a 50-50 chance of determining that. As you read through, pick out keywords in the question. You can highlight words in the question if you'd like. You can also underline a word in the question to help you as you go through and take the test. And that process applies to all of the exams. One last thing on the PMP before we move on, because I know we have several others to get through. Keep in mind that PMI, for any of its exam, as well as the PMP, does not provide you with the number of questions you get right or the number of questions you get wrong. They provide you with a score, and that score says you are either above target, on target, needs improvement, one of those. Sorry, there's a fourth one too, and it just slipped my mind. But they'll give you those types of score sheets. So you don't know how many you get right, nor do you know how many you get wrong, nor do they give you a percentage. They just say you are above target, on target, needs improvement, etc. So think about that. So that's the PMP. I want to ask of the audience. So for 9 of you asked, we're interested in having some more details about the PMP primarily. So let's take a minute or two and see, are there any other questions about the PMP that I may not have answered yet? And go ahead and put your questions in chat. Okay. Mariella, I think the next one is the PMP, or PMI CP certification, correct? Oh, sorry, there's one, Angela. What's a good way to justify getting the PMP if I'm a product manager rather than a project manager? And is this for you personally, or is this for you to justify to an employer to help you with to help with the cost of the class? Gotcha. Okay. Angela, what I would say is that as a product manager, more than likely, throughout the life cycle of your product, you're going to be working with multiple projects to support enhancements, to support upgrades, etc. And knowing how projects work and having a standardized way of understanding projects, of understanding the importance of stakeholder management, of communications, etc., is a good way. And of course, the PMP is the gold standard for that. So that's why how I would justify it. I would recommend I would say, this helps your career goal. It also helps you as the product manager, if you have project managers supporting you, to know, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Are they following the standards? Yeah, sometimes we get stuck on the terminology, or get stuck on that. I think that as a project manager, for me, I have to keep in mind that projects are done for 2 reasons. One, for value, and the other is to enable change. And so if we keep both of those in line as we guide our projects, as a project manager, for me, it helps me working with product managers, executives, etc. All right. Any other questions? Well, let's go ahead and move to the CP. Now, the CP is one of our newer exams that we have in the mix, and it is the construction professional exam. Now, PMI for the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years, in 2021, when the Project Management Institute moved the to PMBOK 7, the focus shifted from traditional project management, waterfall-based methodology to hybrid and agile methodologies, as well as um, traditional project management. However, the folks that are in what we call built environment or construction environments, they run their projects very traditional and very waterfall, meaning that they have specific laid out phases and gates, and they use specific tools such as the compass tool and the project risk tool and other tools that are related to project management. They still deal with, of course, stakeholders and communication and change orders and all of those things. However, we were hearing from the industry that they wanted a certification that focused for individuals, particularly around construction. So PMI created the construction professional exam. That exam is 120 questions, 230 minutes. So it also is a long exam. There's the cost. It is Content is, of course, contract management, heavy in contract management. 50% of the exam is all about contracts. Another 30% of the exam is related to stakeholders. And a stakeholder is anyone that is influenced or may be influenced or perceives themselves to be influenced by a project. So that's a lot of people. Strategy and scope management. How do we make sure that the scope of the project stays on track and that if there are changes, we are following our change process? And then lastly, project governance. So those are the four areas of the exam content. The requirements for this exam, there is no education requirement, um, meaning there is no bachelor's or GED. You need to have at least 3 years of on-the-job construction or built environment experience within the last 10 years. And then, of course, you have to take either a self-paced class offered by PMI, or you can take instructor-led training. And I'm pleased to announce that PMA and Educate 360, we're going to be launching our PMI CP exam prep class this July. And that will be a 5-day class versus the PMI PMP exam prep class is a 4-day class. So same strategy applies when we're taking standardized tests. Remember, read the last question, reread the last question, highlight words in the question. Of the 4 answers, look at which ones can I eliminate first, and then concentrate on the remaining 2. Because they're going to be asking, I always tell people, there's the way you do it on your job, there's the wrong way to do it, and there's the PMI way. They're testing you on the PMI way. So how does PMI want you to answer the question? That's what they're testing you on, because when they certify you as a project manager with that certification, you're able to, whether it's the CP or the agile or the risk professional or the program or the portfolio or any of those, you're able to go work in any industry and say, yes, I can do what you've asked me to do. Question on the construction professional that I haven't answered yet. And then we'll move. I'll leave it open. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the PGMP certification, which is the next one in the mix. There it is. And that's the program manager. So this is someone, when we think about projects, projects feed programs and programs feed portfolios. And a portfolio is a grouping of like-minded projects. Think like your or my 401k. I may have stock portfolio, I may have a bond portfolio, and within that, I may say I'm looking at municipal bonds, or I'm looking at physical, or I'm looking at construction bonds, or whatever the case may be. Those could be the programs. But the projects support the programs, which support the portfolios. So a program management professional, that exam is 170 questions, 240 minutes. It is broken into the following: 15% is program alignment, 16% is stakeholder engagement, program lifecycle management. In other words, how do you manage a program? How do you manage it throughout its life? Because some programs, go have a certain lifespan. Take, for example, Apple, iPhone. Within the iPhone, finally this year, I believe, Apple decided to retire the program of the iPhone 10, and they no longer support enhancements or upgrades for the iOS or iPhone 10. So that's an example of where a program is sunsetted or is no longer viable. Governance is 14%, and then business alignment is 11%. The difference here for the program, as you start to see now again, where you have to have 48 hours of project manage, excuse me, 48 months of project management experience if you have a high school degree, GED, and 84 months of project experience within the last 8 years. So not only do you have to have experience serving, working with projects, but also programs. And then if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, you have to have 48 months of project management. That should say program management experience down below here. I'm sorry, I just saw that error. So sorry, I didn't mean to confuse you there. So 84, the program management experience there. Sorry about that. The cost is up there. This is a more expensive exam. And so those are the details for the program management professional, or PGMP. Questions about the PGMP? I haven't answered yet. Okay. Let's look at our last one, which is the risk match. Actually, we'll look at the one that was the highest scoring. Oh, sorry. Can the 48 hours of project experience also be before obtaining your PMP? Yes, Ashley, they can be. In fact, you don't have to have your PMP to get your PMI, the PGMP. So you could get that first if you wanted to. And let's look at the risk management professional. So the risk management professional, this is a very narrowly focused exam and area for PMI, and it's all about risk. And we look at how do we plan for risk? How do we analyze risk? How do we identify risk? How do we monitor risk and close risks? And how do we respond to risks? So if we think about the PMP, of course, all of our projects have risk. All of our certifications have a section on risk. This, though, is a class an exam that's dedicated 115 questions over 2.5 hours or 150 minutes related to risk and in all of those areas. You have to have, if you have a high school degree or GED, you have to have 36 months of risk management experience and 40 hours of project risk management education. The RMP class that we have, that we offer, provides that amount of risk management education. If you have a bachelor's degree or higher, it's 24 months of risk management experience and 30 hours of risk management education. I don't know why PMI decided to do the 40 versus 30 on the risk management education. However, they did. So with this, same standardized questions apply, or same approach to standardized questions apply. All right, I just looked at time and realized we have 3 minutes left. I did want to mention, lastly, the newest exam or the newest certification that PMI just launched earlier this month. And that is the PMI AI, so the cognitive project management in AI. Brand new certification. There are no prerequisites for it. It's 100 questions. It's an online or an e-learning exam. Um, and there's the cost and how it's broken out. So if you're interested in AI and how AI and project management are going to, or how AI is going to shape project management moving forward, and you're interested in getting a certification, I strongly consider looking at this one. Okay, with that, I'm going to ask, in the last 2 minutes, um, questions. What haven't I answered that you have a question on? And I thank you all for your great participation today.
Awesome, Brent. I'll go ahead and give our audience this last 2 minutes to throw in any last minute questions. But I just wanted to let everyone attending know that if they miss out on any part of the session, that we will absolutely be sharing a recording with all of you in an email after the webinar. And it looks like we got a
No,
question.
Lisa, you don't. You don't have to have project management experience for this. There's no prerequisites for the CPM AI. You're welcome, Tammy. Explain the certificate. Oh, glad, Daniel. Glad I could help. Thanks, Ashley.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I went ahead and dropped a little bit more info if you want to learn a little bit more info on this topic or any of the topics we covered today, or just visit projectmanagementacademy.net. Please do not be afraid to click on those links that I dropped in the chat. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, audience, for your amazing questions. And thank you, Brent, as always.
Thank you for having me. I hope you all have a great day and an even better weekend.
Likewise, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today, and hopefully we see you all very soon. Bye for now.